Why is Doom making deals in Krakoa instead of taking things like he normally would? What makes Victor Vaughn interested in even going to the Hellfire Gala? And most importantly, what exactly does he see in his vision of Ultron and how much of it has already come true? Let's talk about it. Hello, everyone. My name is Riddler. Wrong universe, I know. And this is Marvel Rivals Season 2 Impending Doom. Our story begins from the perspective of Doom 2099. He muses to himself in the new chapter of the Book of Doom. Within the Libera Cielo, Doom's floating fortress in the year 2099, Doom chides Emma Frost for having the audacity to throw a party. Not only that, but she had the nerve to invite Doom to revel with commoners. Doom was so offended by this invitation that he thought about destroying Krakoa entirely. Let's pause for a second, real quick. I just want you to imagine that for me, please, you invite someone to a massive party you were throwing with a bunch of the most important people ever, and then suddenly your entire island is incinerated by a giant doom laser because you had the gall to ask him if he wanted to be there. Victor never changed. Not that he could if he wanted to, but getting back on track. Before giving his response to Emma's invitation, Doom performed a scientific experiment on some of his chronovium crystals. During said trial, he was shown a vision of the future, a vision of countless lives slain and the survivors being fused into nightmarish, almost Lynchian combinations of technology and organic matter, all orchestrated by Ultron. Doom immediately amended his experiment. Instead of trying to disrupt certain events within the time stream to change the future as he had done in the past, the TSE, in fact, proved too complex to navigate. Doom hilariously blames this on his past self, completely ignoring any involvement he had in the matter, even though he's just as to blame as the Doom of 2024, but whatever. Unfortunately for him, however, Ultron appears to have been alerted to Doom's tampering. The morning after his experiment, a group of his Doom bots defy his direct orders, turning to him and uttering a single phrase: "I'm coming home." Doom immediately destroys these bots, but he knew better than to rest on his laurels when it comes to Ultron. His mind instead drifted back to the Hellfire Gala, and more importantly, to Krakoa, a living island that was oversaturated with chronovium and thusly chronal energy. Doom could use that chronal energy to complete his work. Perhaps the good doctor would be making a house call after all. It is then that our perspective shifts to this dark portent seemingly coming true. The uncanny X-Men, plus Namor, are fighting through waves of bots and, more importantly, getting their very nice gala clothes all torn up. Wolverine, Magic, Psylocke, and Namor make their way to the Sextant on Krakoa, where young mutants can train with their possibly newly awakened powers, which is also a place where they can find some more suitable clothes for combat. As they arrive at the Alpha House in the Sextant, the team goes through the supply chests that are available to them. Namor, Magic, and Psylocke suit up in the classic blue and gold X-Men outfits, which we see reflected in the costumes in the game. Meanwhile, Magneto twists wave after wave of bots into hunks of steel, declaring to Ultron that Krakoa belongs to no person, organic or not, besides mutant kind. The true Ultron, however, is able to fire a beam that strikes Magneto, prompting Captain America to rush over. But much to Steve's horror, his fellow World War II survivor dies in his hands. But before Magneto goes, he assures Steve that on Krakoa, the death of a mutant is not a permanent fixture. I have mentioned this before. Mutants on Krakoa have sort of solved the problem of death. Way back at the dawn of the X-Men, Charles Xavier had a device called Cerebro. He used it to locate and track mutants across the globe. I'm sure many people know this. This is sort of classic X-Men lore and stuff, right? However, in more recent comics, thanks to a hefty upgrade from the Mutant Forge, among others, Cerebro has become possibly the most powerful tool in mutant history. Cerebro has now become capable of storing not only mutant kind's DNA, but also their genetic profiles as a whole, including their memories. For all intents and purposes, this has made mutant kind immortal. When used in conjunction with the powers of the Five, a group of mutants, namely Tempest, Proteus, Elixir, Egg, and Hope Summers, they can use their powers in a very particular combination and order to save and resurrect any mutants who died before their time. It's a very wild story, and it's one of the things that made Krakoa so groundbreaking to the mythos of the X-Men, were that the mutants had essentially beat death, and all of the mutants who were unjustly taken from their time were given another chance. It's a concept that I might go into explicit detail one day if people are interested. But anyway, the interesting thing that this story in Marvel Rival tells us is that when Magneto dies, Cerebro gets all of his genetic data. But to Cerebro, it's just data. He doesn't care. Cerebro does not care that it is mutant genetic profiling. They never have. Cerebro was a mutant tool, so it was always used for mutants. The Five were handpicked particularly because they were mutants, and it was a mutant solution for a mutant problem. They faced the discrimination and hatred, as well as the short lives that had been imposed on mutant kind through the seemingly endless bigotry of the Marvel Universe. This was a mutant solution for mutants through intention. But this story in Marvel Rival tells us there's no reason why the only people who could be resurrected this way would be mutants. In fact, the story warns that our heroes are about to learn that exact lesson in very unexpected ways. The perspective of our story then shifts again. This time, it gives us a first person look at the ever smarmy Tony Stark, who is giving us a rundown on how things have been progressing since the death of Magneto in Ultron's attack on Krakoa. Tony and presumably the other non mutant heroes who were at the gala and were unaware of how Cerebro's true power had come to change, they are all let in on the secret. They're told about Cerebro and its capabilities of holding all the genetic memories and data of anyone uploaded into its database. As we see in the Krakoa screens, and I always thought that this was strange when the map originally came out, whether you win or lose, those cutscenes show Ultron getting his hands on Cerebro, even in like a death lunge before Wolverine immediately destroys the body. He makes contact. So it seems that canonically, Ultron does get his hands on Cerebro no matter what happens on Krakoa. When he does, he drastically upgrades himself into a new form that he is calling Xtron. But when he did this, we learned that the adjustment is actually a lot like what we saw with Ultron in the MCU. Instead of simply grafting Cerebro onto an existing body, Ultron formed a totally new body and attached that to Cerebro from the inside out. Which, of course, meant that his old main body, because remember, the Ultron bots and Ultron himself are not mechanically the same. In this depiction of Ultron, I know there are some where it's all the same. It's not in this version. I don't know what you want me to tell you. So, after doing that, Ultron left his destroyed but repairable body on Krakoa as he fled to the sister nation of Arakko, which, if you're unaware of the Krakoan lore, Krakoa and Arakko are sister countries, but Arakko is on Mars. Tony considers downloading Friday, his ever useful AI, into Ultron's husk, sort of forming basically a new version of Vision. But he realizes that if that went wrong, all of Stark Industries' resources and capabilities would be Ultron's to manipulate, which would be very not good. So instead, Tony's plan becomes to simply reboot the original Ultron and hope for the best, which I cannot overstate this, is the most Looney Tunes ass idea I've ever fucking heard. Tony, that's a terrible idea. He puts safeguards, quote unquote. I'm sure those will hold up. and bets that the rebooted Ultron seeing Extron will trigger a very specific response. Now, as much as I've been making fun, this is not totally out of the realm of possibility. Ultron has a specific tendency to try and take over and corrupt every mechanical mind he can get his hands on. It's much easier for him than dominating fleshy organisms because he's that highly advanced of a machine. So his first priority is to get a control of every machine around him. So, taking that into consideration and considering that Extron is even stronger now that he's fused with Cerebro, the rebooted Ultron, who seems to be the version of Ultron that we are going to play in the game, I believe the playable Ultron will be the one that Tony rebooted on Krakoa. But that rebooted version of Ultron, it might run the numbers and figure out that the biggest threat to him right now in this moment is actually Extron, and it's not the X-Men or um the Avengers or anything like that. It might see Extron as the biggest current threat to its existence, and thusly it kind of be an enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of deal. Um he might that might happen, but man, Stark, that is such a gamble. Just having 2 Ultrons, that's like the worst idea I've ever fucking heard. But if they can fight each other, maybe they'll cancel each other out. He is also hoping, however, that just maybe Ultron will be able to run interference on a certain metal masked doctor who seems deeply unbothered by any of this and much more concerned of stripping Krakoa of all of its crinovium. But that is all I have for you today, my lovely listeners. Thank you so much for joining me. Season 2 is on the horizon. In fact, at the time of recording this, season 2 will be live in exactly 5 hours. So it might already be out by the time that you're listening to this. Who knows? I've got to render this whole video out. But either way, thank you all so much for listening. Hopefully, you are having as much fun with season 2 of Marvel Rivals as I am. I know that for a lot of people, the sheen is starting to come off of the game, but as a comic book lover, I seeing the passion and the energy that is put into these stories, it always makes me want to play the game. And bringing it to the forefront is something that I deeply enjoy doing, even if I haven't been doing it super consistently for a while. Until the next time that I see you, my friends, drink some water, wash your hands, tell someone you love that you love them, and be good people.